On the surface, he is a loyal and indifferent young soldier for the country, but on the surface, he is a mysterious monarch who dominates the world. She calculated step by step, deceiving him of all his first attempts and leaving behind all his wealth to escape. Unexpectedly, the next day, she was carried to the church with a knife. He announced in a high-profile manner, either get married or die. Get married, get married. Can't I get married yet? Rebirth+Favorite Text+Shuangwen, Gold Book, 99 Divorces. Li Shao, please keep a low profile, keywords of the novel. Hidden marriage 99 days. Chief, please be reserved without pop-ups. Hidden marriage 99 days. Chief, please be reserved. Download the complete text. Hidden marriage 99 days. Chief, please be reserved for the latest chapters to read. 1. Chapter 1. Self-growth and self-destruction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 1 million, I guarantee your wife and children will be safe and sound. The ominous voice echoed in circles in the empty abandoned warehouse. Li Bianian was tied up in various ways, and at over 7 months old, his belly was already high and bulging. However, the twins' pregnant belly looked larger and rounder than other pregnant women. Sorry, the CEO is in a meeting. His voice was respectful but there was no warmth. The kidnapper didn't expect to receive such an answer. He was stunned for a moment and couldn't believe it. Are you confused about the situation? I kidnapped Mu Donglin's wife. Sorry, the president is in a meeting. After the words fell, I hung up directly. Upon hearing the busy sound, Li Bianian's eyes were filled with tears, and he leaned against the wall, unable to believe it and shook his head desperately. Impossible, impossible. He is the father of the children, her husband. These words cannot possibly be what Mu Donglin means, impossible. Ah! Li Bianian's tears surged down his face, but he couldn't say a word. Opening his mouth revealed an empty mouth, and the tongue that should have been inside was nowhere to be seen. The kidnapper gritted his teeth in anger and came forward to slap Li Bianian hard on the face, cursing angrily, damn it, mute. I've wasted so much time, how could I tie up something useless like you? The heavy body tilted fiercely, and its huge belly hit the ground, causing a series of piercing pains. Li Bianian's face suddenly turned pale, and his whole body trembled with pain. Happy birthday to my Nian Nian, I will always love you with my Nian Nian. The magnetic male voice rang out, it was Mu Donglin's singing voice, which she recorded as the ringtone for Mu Donglin's incoming calls. But at this moment, the song sounded with extreme sarcasm. The kidnapper almost picked up the phone with excitement, but immediately transferred to Li Bianian after realizing it was a video. He himself shouted from behind, Mu Donglin, you. I'm not Mu Donglin. A soft female voice came from the screen, gentle like water. A delicate face with impeccable delicate features. Lin Keru. Mu Donglin's childhood sweetheart, the deepest white moonlight in his heart. Lin Keru looked apologetic in her eyes and said, Nian Nian, Donglin Gu is really in a meeting. There are several billion yuan investment cases, and this case is very important. You don't want to affect Donglin Ge's business because of you, do you? Li Bianian gave a mournful smile. It turned out that her life was not as good as that of her 2 children in an investment case. By the way, today Donglin and I went to the imperial city and prepared things to decorate the baby room. Because we didn't know whether the children came out as men or women, we specially decorated 2 rooms, one in blue and one in pink. When Lin Keru said these words, her expression was very gentle. Li Bei felt a piercing pain in his stomach, but upon hearing this, his pale face softened a bit. Although they have been married for 3 years, apart from the chaotic night over 7 months ago, they have not had any intimate contact. But fortunately, he is still looking forward to the arrival of these 2 children. Donglin really likes girls. He said if he looks like me, he will definitely be very cute. Li Banyan's gentle smile paused on his face. Seeing her expression, Lin Carew covered her mouth and chuckled lightly, saying, "The baby is 3 months old. This is Donglin's first child, and he is looking forward to it." Li Banyan widened his eyes and struggled to howl, "Ah. Ah. Her child is the first, what about her?" Lin Carew had some pity in her eyes and asked slowly, "Do you really think that the person that night was Donglin Gu?" Li Banyan couldn't believe it and froze in place. "The reason why Donglin Gu doesn't touch you is because he loves me, but I really didn't expect that you would be so hungry and thirsty that you would cheat and have a child during marriage." Lin Carew looked heartbroken. "You keep saying you love Donglin Gu, is that how you love him?" Li Banyan shook his head desperately, his face becoming increasingly pale. "Oh, by the way, I forgot you can't speak anymore. It was a wise decision to keep you silent." Li Banyan's mind let out a loud bang, as if struck by lightning. What does this mean? It was obvious that Lin Carew had no intention of explaining. With a coquettish smile, she said, "If Mu Shichen knew you left his bloodline, would he be happy?" Lin Carew's voice was somewhat proud, and she chuckled repeatedly, "But what's the point of keeping a child of a death row criminal?" Li Bei thought it was a bolt from the blue and widened his eyes. Mu Shichen. That wanted criminal who everyone shouts to fight against. That military thug and drug lord that everyone hates to the bone. Impossible, impossible. She hasn't even seen Mu Shichen before, how could she possibly have a child with him? Her child belongs to her husband, it belongs to Mu Donglin. Hang up for now. Donglin is still waiting for me to go eat. Goodbye, chant. The kidnapper was stunned and shouted angrily, "Didn't you say that Mu Donglin was in a meeting?" There was just no response from there, and the phone had already been hung up. The kidnappers were furious and smashed their phones fiercely, kicking them hard and stepping on Li Banyan's stomach. They cursed and said, "Damn it, these adulterers *** had no intention of coming to save you. Damn it, they got involved with their own little uncle. You're also a slut. Oh, if I don't kill you, I'll go my own way." Her lower body drooped fiercely, as if one hand was holding her, with a heart-wrenching pain that filled her entire stomach. Li Banyan looked at the figure of the person leaving and screamed out in agony. Until it was completely dark, no one extended a helping hand to her. The consciousness became increasingly blurred, and the stirring of the children in their stomachs also decreased. Li Banyan's heart was filled with ashes. Chapter 2 Terrifying Ideas. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As if sinking into endless darkness, unaware of the passage of time and where one is. It seems like an illusion, but also as if it is a real existence. Li Banyan could clearly hear the sound of water flowing around her. The cold water flowed over her head, into her nose and mouth, causing her to instinctively struggle. Opening her eyes, the scorching sunlight penetrated her pupils, causing her head to tilt slightly to the side. The struggling toes quickly touched the tiled floor, and Li Banyan held his breath. He stood up straight, only to find that the water under his feet only reached his waist. Looking down, my lower abdomen was flat and smooth. The originally towering and eye-catching belly had disappeared without a trace. Li Banyan's heart trembled fiercely, "Child." The long-lost voice overflowed from his throat, and Li Banyan couldn't believe it and covered his mouth. Can she speak now? How could it be, how could it be? Carefully extending his fingers, he probed his mouth, smooth yet slightly rough. Is this tongue? She has lost her tongue for 2 years. Suddenly looking up, Li Banyan looked at everything around him, slightly dazzled. The vast blue water is refracted by the sun, and the dazzling golden reflection is swaying before my eyes. Surrounded by towering and elegant buildings. This is the internal swimming pool of the Mu family and also a forbidden area of the Mu family. Looking down, I was only wearing a thin white shirt and a pair of pink pants. The white shirt outlines the lines to the fullest, with two dark spots on the chest clearly contrasting and revealing. But again, it seems familiar. No, no. Li Bianian felt like he was dreaming. How could he possibly be here, have a tongue, or have no children? Looking up at the only way out, I darkened my eyes. At the age of 19, on the first day she was taken back from the market, she was told that she was the fiancée of Mu Donglin, the eldest young master of the Guangshi family and the Mu family. On the third day of Pick.Up, the Mu family held an internal meeting. Just halfway through the meeting, she was knocked unconscious and thrown into the swimming pool of the Mu family, wearing revealing clothes. In a hurry to escape, she bumped into a group of people, and her appearance was clearly visible. From then on, she became famous and infamous. Everyone said that she is naturally promiscuous and tries to seduce a noble man. That period was her most shameful memory. Now, she is immersed in this water, her tongue is safe, and she has no pregnancy. Is it a crazy idea emerged, and Li Bianian's heart suddenly accelerated. But soon he abandoned this idea and sneered, how could it be? Upon hearing his own voice again, Li Bianian's eyes lit up and he smiled loudly. Lowering his head and diving into the water, Li Bianian's graceful figure swam towards the other side of the passage like a swimming fish. The water is getting deeper and deeper. Li Bianian swam in one breath for an unknown amount of time before sticking his head out to take a breath. Fresh air seeped into his nose, and Li Bianian seemed to have come to life. Looking around, Li Bianian finally saw a railing staircase and plunged into it again, swimming towards it. Climbing up the railing in the water, Li Bianian happily broke through the water and threw his wet long hair behind his head, letting out a sigh of relief. Wiping his face, when Li Bianian opened his eyes, he saw a dark bulge in front of him. Chapter 3 Kiss arrived. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Wrapped in navy blue four-cornered swim trunks, it exudes explosive power. This is a very tall man. Healthy wheat-colored skin, with distinct lines and textures on the chest and abdominal muscles, is slowly dripping with water droplets. Down the deep and rugged mermaid line, Li Bianian felt a surge of blood rushing up his head, with a buzzing sound in his mind. Quickly averting his gaze, he climbed up with both hands gripping the railing and lowered his head quickly, saying, "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Ah! However, just as he was speaking, Li Bianian slipped under his feet and leaned forward. Fortunately, Li Bianian was quick-witted and his hands were on the ground, otherwise he would definitely fall and eat shit. Looking up, Li Bianian's nose pressed against a damp area, and the warm temperature hit his face. The heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and Li Bianian's face was instantly scalded, as if it had been poured with boiling water. Taking a closer look, the hidden blue drum bag was magnified in front of me just now, and even Li Bianian saw the sign on it. Luxury brands in France. Sensing the cold gaze above his head, Li Bianian felt more like he had been hit by a bomb and reflexively bounced back. With such a flick, the whole person fell backwards and hit the swimming pool railing with a heavy thud. Immediately after, with a pop sound, Li Bianian's ears were splashed with water again. This is a deep water area, 2 meters long, and when caught off guard, it's impossible to stand. Water was fiercely poured into his nose, and Li Bianian instinctively tilted his head upwards. But the next moment, the whole person sank down again. The feeling of not being able to touch any support on one's limbs makes one feel panicked. Help! Gulu gulu, help! Gulu gulu! Suddenly, his arm tightened and Li Bianian was pulled up, followed by a splashing sound of water, and he was thrown ashore. The man's movements were not at all gentle, as if he was not even aware that he was treating a girl. Climbing up the railing, the man looked coldly at the little girl who had broken into his forbidden area. Yes, little girl. Her long, wet hair draped over her shoulders, and she was wearing an almost transparent white shirt, outlining all the lines of her body. The 2 dark spots stood out, and the pink panties were particularly prominent under the shirt. However, under such seductive attire, a youthful and tender aura emanates from all over the body. Her fair and full thighs were bent and overlapped, shining brightly in the sunlight. Slim shoulders, open collar buttons, delicate and beautiful collarbone, fair and delicate. Her tender face turned red, and a fierce cough came, accompanied by the two tender peaches in front of her trembling gently. To him, the appearance of such a woman was nothing more than a child's playfulness. However, it was such a child that he couldn't help but take two more glances. Her gaze flowed over her pink panties, her gaze becoming increasingly profound. After finally stopping coughing, Li Bianian accidentally turned his head and caught the man's cold and sharp gaze. With his eyes fixed, the man in front of him looked down at him from a high position, and the sunlight above his head enveloped his face, making it difficult to see clearly. But those sharp eyes, like those of a falcon, were already strong enough to overcome the sunlight, almost penetrating her and shooting straight at her. 4. Don't you feel ashamed in Chapter 4? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. What sharp eyes! Li Bianian felt as if he had been seen through, as if he had been stripped naked and exposed in front of him. Wait, it's been stripped clean. Subconsciously bowing his head, he saw the even more thought-provoking outfit on his body than not wearing it, and his small face burned even more. He covered his chest for the first time, and Li Bianian's face turned red and intoxicating. His wet hair was pressed against his face, and there were no secrets left to speak of all over his body. Facing the man's sharp and cold gaze, Li Bianian felt indescribably embarrassed. Come back for another 2 years, now you. The man's voice was calm and powerful, deep and magnetic, with a high-resolution voice rising slightly, with a hint of obvious disgust. The sharp and profound gaze swept around Li Bianian, like a picky eagle picking its prey. It's too small, said the man in front of him with a hint of playfulness in his gaze. It's too small. This man actually thinks she's young. Li Bianian feels humiliated. Although after running away from home, sometimes I can't eat, and after getting infected with drugs, I also become thinner and thinner, but there are places that should be there that are very good, right? Li Bianian looked up and shouted indignantly, I'm 20.4 years old. 24. The man looked down at her from a high position and then landed on the tender peach she was covering, like a miner. Li Bianian's face turned red as he held it back, staring at the divine-like man in front of him. At this moment, Li Bianian finally saw his face clearly. Hard facial features, sharp edges, delicate facial features, as if carved in a painting. A pair of deep and bright eyes, pitch black, sharp like eagles and falcons, clear like clear valleys and springs. However, amidst this clarity, there is an endless chill and a deep sense of danger that cannot be seen at its bottom. Thin lips pursed, red and beautiful. Looking at this face, Li Bianian felt somewhat familiar. But for a moment, I couldn't remember where I had seen it before. Looking down, Li Bianian looked at the burst wrapped in a four-cornered swimsuit and sneered, "You're not big either." Upon hearing this, the man's originally cold and deep eyes, resembling Buddha's eyes, passed through an extremely brilliant light at that moment. His gaze slowly withdrew and he looked at himself, saying in a slow voice, "Really? I don't know who's staring straight." After being exposed with just one word, Li Bianian's face turned even redder and he retorted, "I just saw how small it is." "Is that right? So I came specifically to kiss and confirm its size." The man half bent down and looked down at Li Bianian from a high position. "I kiss your master. I just accidentally bumped into it." Li Bianian's face turned increasingly red. Inexplicably, there is a feeling of guilt. After living for 24 years, Li Bianian had not even seen the naked body of a little boy a few times, and had no concept of the size of such things. But, shouldn't it be too small, right? Look, everyone is calling it grandpa, and you're still deceiving yourself by saying little. A pair of deep eyes squinted slightly, watching her increasingly flushed cheeks, as well as the timid and curious gaze. Her red lips seemed to be slightly raised. "Your expression doesn't seem like you're feeling small." "You. You exposed maniac. It's shameful to just discuss such things with a stranger woman in such a grand manner, isn't it? Chapter 5. Good skills, but too small. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Being able to appear in the swimming pool of the Mu family indicates that this person must have a close relationship with the Mu family. How could they behave so? Shameless. Shame. The man seemed to chuckle lightly and took a step forward. The golden sunlight fell on him, casting a long shadow that covered all of Li Banyan's petite figure. What a strong sense of oppression. This is the aura of a leader who always holds a high position. This man has an extraordinary status. Li Banyan's amber eyes were slightly familiar, and his eyes narrowed slightly without any sound or expression. The man looked down at the little girl in front of him who claimed to be a woman, his deep eyes full of playfulness. However, when I accidentally caught a glimpse of her eyes flickering with contemplation and speculation, the playfulness in my heart was as if it had been fermented, uncontrollable. This little girl doesn't seem to know him. Dressed up like this and entering my swimming pool, isn't it? Not here to *** me. The man half bent down, his delicate and tough face forced him closer. Perhaps I can teach you what shame is. As he spoke, his big palm grabbed towards Li Banyan's collar. Li Banyan was startled in his heart and immediately moved back. He reached out and patted his hand away, shouting, "Isn't it too small?" Seeing Li Banyan's reaction, the man's interest deepened in his eyes and he said leisurely, "It's okay, I'm not picky about food." Then he reached out and grabbed her. Li Bei's heart trembled as he crawled towards the side, but he was still one step late. The man's hand grabbed her slender shoulder with a bit of strength, causing Li Banyan to ache. This doesn't seem like being picky about food, it's clearly like being impatient with hunger and thirst. With a hiss, Li Banyan grabbed his palm with his backhand and twisted it forcefully, kicking his legs towards his lower plate at the same time. Unexpectedly, this man's reaction was faster than she had imagined. When Li Banyan attacked, he had already avoided the side, but he held her hand but didn't let it go. Instead, he pulled her around. Li Banyan stumbled and leaned back, exclaiming in surprise. Immediately, the man's hand reached out towards her face. Li Banyan gritted his teeth and rolled his center of gravity with his hand, gripping his wrist with one hand. A warm and unfamiliar touch came from my chest, my rough hands pressing through my shirt, the heat was overwhelming. "Ah ah!" Li Banyan screamed in a sharp voice, and with a terrifying backhand slap, "Damn pervert." The sharp voice made the man's face turn black at once. The big hand immediately moved away and covered her mouth, and Li Banyan was lifted up like carrying a chick. Li Banyan has lived for so many years and has never encountered such an opponent. If you can't beat it, then hit your chest. Even her husband has never touched her here, he's just a jerk. The man lifted Li Banyan effortlessly. Seeing her struggling limbs, she coldly said, "My skills are good, but they're too small." Too small. Li Banyan felt both embarrassed and annoyed, vigorously thrusting his hands and feet and saying, "Ma. Poop. You're still being good after getting a discount, you bastard." The man looked at Li Banyan with a half-angry and helpless expression, and the corners of his rosy lips slightly raised. However, at this moment, a faint voice came. Chapter 6. People who can't be provoked. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The man heard it, and Li Banyan also heard it. Looking towards the place where the sound came from, it was the only way from the swimming pool to the outside world except for the interior of the Mu family. Listening to the sound, there must be more than one or two people. The man glanced at Li Banyan, his eyes icy cold, and said, "Did you bring it?" Li Banyan shook his head vigorously and stared at him. The man raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Don't talk, I'll let you down." Li Banyan nodded forcefully and made an oath gesture by reaching out his hand. The man put Li Bianian down and casually pulled a towel hanging nearby, covering him. Li Bianian only then realized that there were still towels and bathrobes on the nearby shelf. The voices outside were getting louder and louder, faintly familiar to the ear. At that intersection, a group of people quickly appeared. It looks like there are about 7 or 8, from a distance, they should be around 10 or 20 years old, and the oldest should only be in their early 20s. Led by Li Xueqing. Her sister, the biological father, who abandoned her for 19 years, is the daughter of her second marriage partner. However, the current Li Xueqing looks different from the Li Xueqing in her memory. That acclaimed young lady, dignified, beautiful, generous, and full of femininity. And this Li Xueqing looks very green and astringent. Although wearing makeup looks deliberately mature, there is still an irresistible greenness between the eyebrows. And that clothing. Wasn't it a popular style several years ago? Although she is only a stepdaughter, Li Xueqing has been pampered for many years and is not someone who can wear fashionable clothes. And Uncle Zhang's daughter, Uncle Li's son, they stood together, all appearing particularly young and youthful. Upon seeing this scene, Li Bianian's originally terrifying and crazy thoughts in his heart suddenly magnified in an instant. Did she go back 5 years ago? 5 years ago, she was 19 years old. I have been an orphan for 19 years, a little rascal that everyone despises for over a decade. Suddenly, a man claiming to be her biological father descended from the sky and took her back, and her life underwent earth-shattering changes thereafter. This scene should be the 3rd day she was taken back, the day she met someone at the Mu family. But who is this man who appears in the swimming pool? She has never seen it before. There seemed to be some hesitation on the other side, not knowing whether to enter or not. One of the people said, "Xueqing, didn't you say you came to find your sister? How could your sister come here? This is the internal swimming pool of the Mu family, and my father specifically instructed me not to run around, especially inside. Let's still go." "Yeah, my dad also told me that there is someone in the Mu family who we can't afford to provoke. If they collide, it's not a joke." Why didn't Li Xueqing know? But now she's not willing to leave at this time. She has been with the Li family for over a decade, and in everyone's hearts, she is the only daughter of the Li family. In the future, she will marry the young master of the Mu family. Who knew that when suddenly a Li Bianian was killed and the fiancé of the Mu family changed people, how could she be willing to accept it? After putting in a lot of effort to lead the scene, someone was hired to throw Li Bianian's little slutty hoof into the swimming pool. I had originally thought that slutty hoof would be timid and afraid of offending the adult of the Mu family, so I had to leave that way. When she leads a group of people to see her disheveled clothes, she will definitely make Li Bianian infamous. Chapter 7. Difficulty in using the brain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But to my surprise, she has brought people here now and has not yet seen the figure of Li Bianian. Can this little scumbag still fly with wings? It must still be here. Li Xueqing was unwilling and looked away from afar. Look, there's someone there. A loud sound caught everyone's attention. Everyone saw it. Right next to the swimming pool, a casual beach chair was placed, with a tall and upright figure standing next to him, wearing a towel. This man is young, tall, introverted, and profound. At this age, appearing here should be Mu Donglin, right? When Li Xueqing saw this person, her heart tightened slightly and couldn't help but jump. Mu Donglin, Mu Dasho. Unable to help but take a step forward, Li Xueqing spoke up and raised her voice, "Excuse me, have you seen my sister?" When Li Xueqing spoke so, everyone was shocked. The person behind her quickly pulled her and whispered, "You're crazy. Who has the courage to hide here? Your sister is at least from the Li family, she wouldn't be so brainless." Li Xueqing pretended to ponder, but she already knew it. It doesn't matter whether Li Bianian has a brain or not. If she wants her to be here, she must be here. With a hint of malice in her eyes, Li Xueqing tilted her head and said, Nian Nian is not sensible. It's very likely that she's hiding here to avoid being held accountable. In case she collides with a big shot. The people behind them all understood and praised, You're so kind to your sister. Alas, unfortunately my brain is not working well. It's not good to hit someone somewhere, but at such an important banquet. The distance was a bit distant, and no one noticed that the man's eyes were becoming impatient as he looked over. Glancing sideways at the little girl hiding behind the shelf with a low-pitched voice, he asked, Looking for you. Li Bianian is now hiding behind the shelf, her petite body completely covered. Looking ahead, my eyes were as cold as ice, and the hatred within burst out without any disguise. Li Bianian's lips were filled with a cold smile as he looked at the group of people across the shore from afar and sneered, No, it's not. The man took all the expressions on Li Bianian's face into his eyes, and his already deep and sharp eyes shone brightly for a moment. It looks like just a 17 or 18-year-old girl, but such an expression is not something that an inexperienced underage girl can have. With a strong sense of interest, he slightly raised his eyebrows. When I turned around, my expression was already cold. Looking at the group of young people, their eyes were cold and piercing, sharp and ruthless. Their thin lips parted slightly, and they whispered in a cold voice, Get out. An expected and unexpected attitude. Li Bianian looked at the man and raised his eyebrows slightly. Good guy, that's how we should treat those little beasts. And when those little animals heard his words, they were all startled. Those who were timid had already turned around and wanted to escape. Upon hearing this, Li Xueqing's face turned white and red, but she was still somewhat unwilling. She gritted her head and shouted, Brother Mu, I am Li Haoran's daughter. I am here to find my sister. Brother Mu. Who is this? His relationship with her is so intimate that he can call her brother. The man's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this title. But Li Bianian couldn't help but laugh out loud. Do you really dare to shout, anyone who pulls someone is already a brother? But the voice was extremely low, and no one heard except for the man standing not far away. The man leisurely turned his head and glanced at her, his eyes cold, but he was full of interest. Turning his head to look at the girl across the shore, the man's voice became slightly calm and asked, What is your sister's name? Chapter 8. Defile my pure and noble soul. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing the man's words, Li Bianian immediately became vigilant in his heart. This guy probably already knows that the person Li Xueqing is looking for is himself. Asking the name now, isn't it because he wants to settle the accounts after autumn? Li Bianian looked at the gap where he turned his head and immediately turned around and retreated towards the back. And when the people across from him heard these words, they all looked at Li Xueqing with envy in their eyes. That person changed their attitude when they heard Li Haoran's name. Li Xueqing was also overjoyed and quickly replied, My name is. The man's gaze flickered and he said in a cold voice, I didn't ask you. Li Xueqing's recent joy suddenly extinguished as if she had been poured with a basin of cold water. Seeing some of her friends gloating next to her, Li Xueqing's smile couldn't be sustained. My sister. Her name is Li Bianian. Li Bianian. The man silently recited the name, his eyes slightly bright, and his eyebrows raised without a trace, saying, You can go now. Li Xueqing chuckled and said, Then. Let's go first. However, no one answered again, and the group of people had to retreat in frustration. The man turned his head to look at the shelf where Li Bianian was hiding, but the little girl who had just squatted underneath suddenly disappeared. Did you run away? Hands and feet are so fast. Li Bianian. Right. Turning his eyes, he lowered his gaze and saw a shiny little thing on the ground. The sound of military boots hitting the ground immediately caught the eye of a long shadow. Gu Minji bent down to pick up the little thing, glanced at it under the sun, and said, Boss, isn't this a woman's thing? Bring it. Gu Minji respectfully handed it over, and Mu Shichen pinched it to see that it was a uniquely shaped small earring. Surrounded by a sparkling pure diamond is a finely crafted snake with distinct scales and black and white agate inlays, exquisite and luxurious. Check. Yes. This is a forbidden area. A woman has just entered with such a big bang, it is very likely that she is a spy sent by the enemy, or she wants to come and kill Mu Shichen. Just as Gu Minji was about to execute, he was stopped and said, "Wait a minute. What's wrong, boss?" Mu Shichen took the small earrings from his hand and carefully examined them, clearly seeing a small mark at the back. This is that person's craft. Stop checking, issue a wanted notice. Gu Minji paused and his expression became serious. Wanted warrant, but it's quite remarkable. Only criminals with heinous crimes are worth the boss's big battle to issue a wanted warrant. Do you know the origin of that woman? I don't know, but she violated my chastity. When he said this, his face was calm, his voice was calm, and he remained calm and composed. But when Gu Minji heard these serious words, he almost choked to death with his saliva. Infringed chastity. Did she bully you? Did she succeed? No way. Gu Minji's calm and serious expression suddenly shattered, making it hard to believe that he looked at his boss and said, "The boss has kept his chastity for 25 years, is it finally gone?" Dirty. Mu Shichen gave him a contemptuous look and said leisurely, "I was kissed by her." Gu Minji's full of anticipation suddenly turned into flowing water in the east, and he said speechlessly, "Just kiss and issue a wanted notice. She has defiled my pure and noble soul and must be wanted." Chapter 9. The Great Lock of the Soul. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The person involved was completely unaware of any suspicion of making a big fuss and reached out to pat his shoulder. "I'll leave it to you." "Boss, are you serious?" The footsteps that were originally about to leave paused, and then turned to look over with a smile on their face. "Do you think I'm just joking?" Gu Minji's spirit suddenly shook, and he shook his head seriously. "No, I just think the boss looks very handsome when he takes it seriously." Mu Shichen nodded in appreciation and said, "You're not bad either." Gu Minji felt a bit embarrassed when praised. After a chuckle, he immediately asked, "But boss, where did that woman kiss you?" Upon hearing this, Mu Shichen raised his eyebrows slightly in thought for a moment before slowly speaking, "The Great Lock of the Soul." Gu Minji looked at his back, it was messy in the wind. He has heard of the window of the soul. What kind of ghost is this lock of the soul? Li Bianian fled so recklessly that he managed to escape the ghostly maze corridor and reach the resting area provided by the Mu family for guests. Now, Li Bianian has a terrible conjecture in his heart that urgently needs to be confirmed. Following his memory, he found his original lounge. The door was unlocked, and Li Bianian knocked on it with uncertainty. No one responded. Reaching out and opening the door, Li Bianian saw the decorations inside as soon as he entered. Cosmetics, clothes, bags. All of them were bought for her by her stepmother and Li Xueqing during a show. Li Bianian's heart suddenly quickened, he closed the door and locked it, then took a quick step to the bathroom. The mirror in the bathroom clearly reflects the face of Li Bianian. It's not the severe sickly and pale complexion she suffered day after pregnancy, let alone the haggard appearance she had. This face is beautiful, delicate, green, and immature. The skin is exceptionally fair, with a healthy and rosy complexion. There is still some baby fat on the doll's face, and she still looks childish. Isn't she just a little girl? Li Bianian stared at the mirror in disbelief, then took off his bathrobe and untied his shirt inside, turning his back towards the mirror. There should be a long scar on the left back of the waist. That was 3 years ago when she was stabbed with a dagger to save Mu Donglin. This scar almost killed her. It was precisely because of this scar that Mu Donglin held a wedding with her, and they treated each other with respect for 3 years. However, now the smooth and tender scar on the waist and back, which should have existed ferociously, is completely gone. As if it had never appeared before. My heartbeat is getting faster and faster. Suddenly, an unbelievable scream came from the throat. She really came back to life. She came back to the age of 19, when everything had just begun. She didn't have her tongue cut off, nor did she marry Mu Donglin. She is still her, the little rascal who has been wandering in the market since childhood, rather than the daughter of the Li family who thinks she is getting better and better in the eyes of everyone. Gently caressing his face, Li Bianian burst out laughing. Lin Keru, Mu Donglin, and Li Shueqing. They owe her, she will gradually recover it. Ding-dong, the doorbell rang, followed by noisy voices. Li Bei felt a chill in his heart and immediately changed himself into a clean and tidy outfit. The doorbell rang incessantly, and the sound of speaking grew louder and louder. Hiding Xuanlai's bathrobe and those wet clothes of unknown origin in the cabinet, Li Bianian pulled out a towel and draped it around his neck, pretending to have just taken a shower. The outside finally couldn't help but slap the door hard and shout, "Li Bianian, get out of here." 10, Chapter 10. Kneel down to apologize. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dare to hit people, dare not see people, right? A loud voice with fierce anger. Don't think you can't hide inside and don't come out. I can't do anything about you. Beat the 2 sisters like this and don't come out to give an explanation. Upon hearing such a shout, Li Bianian suddenly remembered that she had beaten up her 2 cousins at the family banquet held by the Mu family today. The specific situation is unclear to Li Bei. I only remember that after hitting someone, she was immediately knocked unconscious in the hallway and woke up soaked in water. Immediately after, Li Shueqing came with a group of people to take a good look at her, and her reputation for being promiscuous and vulgar spread. Since then, Li Bianian has been despised by many people. Grandpa felt sorry for her being insulted and sent her directly to a private university. It turned out that after she was soaked in water, there was still such a group of people coming to her door. Li Bianian opened the door and saw a bunch of elders crowded outside at a glance. Various uncles and aunts stood at the door, looking at her with great momentum. This formation can quite intimidate people. Li Bianian raised his eyebrows slightly, looking somewhat surprised, and asked, "Uncles and aunts, may I ask if there is anything else?" Uncle Li Haoqin became angry and shouted, "You still have the face to ask." As he spoke, a girl pulled out from behind him. From her physical appearance, this girl appears to be around 20 years old, but her face, my nose is blue and my face is swollen. A big panda's eyes are swollen high, and my makeup has burned all over my face. My lipstick has also slipped onto my face, and I look as black and red as a singer. Puff. Li Bianian couldn't help but laugh out loud, but realized that he shouldn't have laughed like this, so he immediately restrained a bit. However, this smile undoubtedly made everyone around me furious. Wow! Li Kuan cried loudly, "Dad, how can I see people again in the future? She beat me up like this, how can I go to school tomorrow?" Don't cry, don't cry. Dad will help you regain justice," Li Haoqin comforted his daughter with a heart-wrenching expression in his eyes. Just as he turned his head and looked at Li Bianian, his eyes were filled with malice. "Your cousin Li Ying has already gone to the hospital, and her career is still on the rise. But you pushed her down the stairs and broke her hands. What a wicked heart. Second uncle, are you sure it's me? It was Li Kuan standing with her at the time, shouldn't the suspect be your precious daughter?" Li Bianian didn't have any nervousness on his face and looked at them calmly. Li Kuan is the one who knows the most about how Li Ying fell. Li Kuan felt a bit guilty in his eyes, but when he saw so many supporters around him, he immediately straightened his waist and confidently said, "It's you. You still don't admit hitting someone. I made you, but I won't carry Li Ying's pot. Finally admit it. Li Haoqin shouted angrily, the most important thing for a girl is a face. Li Kuan is going to become a big star. You beat her up like this, how can she still mess around in the entertainment industry? You should kneel down and apologize to me immediately, otherwise I'll be careful not to be polite to you. Hello, Li Bianian immediately waved his hand innocently. If you're unreasonable, her original dignity is also unacceptable in the entertainment industry. Li Kunwen trembled with anger and looked at his father, crying out, Dad, look at her. Li Haoqin gritted his teeth in anger and roared, don't think that the old man has arranged a marriage for the Mu family for you, so you can do whatever you want. You don't have the surname Mu yet. Kneel down to me immediately and apologize to your sister. I won't pursue this matter anymore.